With the upcoming 10th edition Space Wolves refresh, the Sons of Russ are finally getting back to their Viking roots, and ditching the whole furry vibe that GW has been peddling for a bit too long. And if you're like me, returning to this Viking aesthetic is more than enough to make the Space Wolves a tempting army idea. So today, in preparation for the Space Wolves refresh in 10th edition, we're going to sit down and figure out all of the markings, organization, and heraldry of the Space Wolves. Welcome to Gone Hollow Minis, my name is Colt, and today we will be organizing the great companies of the Space Wolves. Okay, getting into this, I want to mention a few things. Firstly, I'm recording this before we've seen the full range reveal for the Space Wolves. So while we've seen the Champions of Fenris box, we haven't gotten a look at the codex, the transfers, or about half of the models that will be revealed. The most important part there is not having seen the new transfer sheet. In this series, I like to break down the entire transfer sheet for each faction by chunks so you can understand what each and every decal means. While the Space Wolves do have a current transfer sheet, it's a little bit on the smaller side, and I haven't seen the new one yet because we haven't gotten pictures of it. So I'll be sure to do a part 2 when we have images of that, but for now I'll just be doing the best with what I have on hand. In addition, unlike the factions covered in the past 2 videos in this series, I'm not a Space Wolves player. I've done my research, but I'm definitely not in the community. So please forgive me if I make any mistakes here. I'm going off of the past 3 codexes, mainly in the 7th, 8th, and 9th edition, but I still may miss some things. So if I do, please feel free to correct me in the comments and I'll do my best to pin those. That said, let's finally get into it. As we teased earlier, the Space Wolves are far from Codex compliant, which makes my job both harder and easier in 2 very different ways. It's harder in that all of the markings you see on these models mean something unique to the Space Wolves. No prior knowledge here, we gotta start from square one. However, it's easier in the way that the Space Wolves don't really keep a firm number on the types of squads, vehicles, and other resources that are in each great company. We'll take a look at an example in a second, but just keep in mind that the Space Wolves are very freeform in their organization and heraldry. But like I said, we'll go ahead and start with the chapter organization. This is a representation of the Annulus, a big stone dais within the Space Wolves fortress on Fenris. It represents the 13 great companies of the Space Wolves. And yes, I did say 13 and not 10. Space Wolves really do not care about Gilliman's book, and so they treat their companies quite a bit differently. Whereas other chapters form their companies around a specific structure, with each company contributing to the chapter's strength as a single military formation, the great companies of the Space Wolves act as kind of their own pseudo-feudal organizations. The names and identities of each are dependent on their current Wolf Lord. This Marine is the closest analog to a typical Space Marine captain. He leads the great company and is the de facto commander second, of course, to the chapter master. When elected to the position of Wolf Lord, the Space Marine will decide on the icon that his company will take. These are all figures of Fenrisian myth and Space Wolf legend. When this symbol is decided, it is placed both upon the great company's banner and the armor of each of its battle brothers. At the same time, the Wolf Lord will often change his name to fit the company's new identity, such as Eagle Silverhand changing his name to Eagle Ironwolf when he became Wolf Lord of, you guessed it, the Iron Wolves. Now, as stated, there are technically 13 great companies, but one of them is a little bit different. As for the normal ones, though, their names are as follows. There are the Blood Maws, led by Bran Redmaw. The Sea Wolves, led by Aengir Krakendoom. The Sons of Morkai, led by Eric Morkai. The Red Moons, led by Gunnar Redmoon. The Death Wolves, led by Harold Deathwolf. The Storm Wolves, led by Bjorn Stormwolf. The Iron Wolves, led by Vorik Gnarlfist. The Drake Slayers, led by Crom Dragongaze. The Blackmanes, led by Ragnar Blackmane. The Fire Howlers, led by Sven Bloodhowl. The Grimbloods, led by Karl Grimblood. And finally, the Company of the Great Wolf, led by Chapter Master Logan Grimnar. This is the closest that the Space Wolves get to a first company. The many priests and subchambers of the Space Wolves are included in this great company, and Grimnar himself employs many Wolfguard veterans. And then there's the 13th company. Lucky number 13 stands for the Wolfen. This is the company in the Horus Heresy that hounded the Thousand Sons into the warp. In the 41st millennium, it stands empty, representing all of the battle brothers and companies lost to time. Now that we know a little bit about the identity of each great company, we can get into the organization. Below the Wolf Lords are the battle leaders. Very, inspired names here. Everything else is Wolf something, and then we just have Battle Leader. These guys are kind of the equivalent of a Primaris Lieutenant. These guys are part of the Wolf Guard. We'll get to those guys in a second, but for now suffice to say that they're the veterans of a great company. Additionally, each great company can have any number of members from the chapter's priesthoods. Space Wolf priests come in 3 cool flavors. Rune priests are more or less the chapter's psychers, though their abilities supposedly come from the world spirit of Fenris and not the warp. Sure, yeah, we'll go with that. I feel like the Thousand Sons probably have something to say about that though. You also have the Wolf Priests, who are sort of a mix between chaplains and apothecaries. They look after both the physical and spiritual health of the Space Wolves, as well as select aspirants for ascendancy to Astartes. Then finally, you have the Iron Priests, who are sort of the Techmarine equivalents. Each of these priest types can serve with a Great Company, though officially they are all under the provision of Logan Grimnar's Great Company. Beyond that, the organization of a Great Company is more or less decided by veterancy and battlefield role. Instead of being called squads, Space Wolf units are called packs. The newest and greenest of Space Wolves are grouped into packs of Blood Claws. These Marines have yet to temper their battle lust inherent in their gene seed. As such, they are gathered into close support squads, where they will gain experience and hone their unchecked anger. Once a battle brother gains enough experience, they will graduate to the ranks of the Grey Hunters. These are the unique battle line unit of the chapter, and represent Marines who have honed the temper of their Primarch. Next are Wolf Scout packs. Unlike other chapters, these squads aren't made of neophytes. Instead, they are a highly specialized unit of trackers, hunters, and vicious fighters, picked most commonly from the ranks of the Grey Hunters. They eschew their power armor for lighter Scout Carapace armor or Phobos armor, not for lack of experience, but instead to better facilitate their goals. If a battle brother serves for long enough, the flaw in their gene seed will begin to manifest. If a Marine can resist becoming a fully fledged Wolfen, it will manifest in elongated fangs and an absolutely atrocious hairstyle. These are the types of Marines who are accepted into the ranks of the Long Fangs. They're a semi-veteran unit of experienced Astartes who specialize in fire support. While not as veteran as the final unit type we've yet to talk about, they're still aged and experienced warriors in their own right. The final unit type is the Wolf Guard. These are the most experienced of the chapter's brothers. There are Great Companies, ancients, veterans, and even have access to harnesses of Terminator plate, something that most companies outside of the first don't get in most other chapters. Now this is the part of the video where I would love to sit down and tell you how many different packs of each unit type fit into each company, but Space Wolves don't really do numbers like that, and their companies are far more freeform than anything seen in other chapters. We have gotten a couple examples though. This one is from the 7th edition Codex, and shows an example of Ragnar Blackmane's company. We can see an absolute ton of Blood Claws, only a few Grey Hunters, and a smattering of Longfangs and Wolf Scouts. So far, this is the only one that I've been able to find in the documents that I had access to. I have seen others floating around, but I wasn't able to track them down in particular, so I didn't feel fully comfortable in citing them. However, some of those example companies were much smaller than this one, so I really don't think unit number matters. But now let's move on to the unit markings. These look a little complicated, but they're not too bad when it gets down to it. A standard Space Wolf's armor will be a pale blue all over. Note the red eye lenses on the helmet and the golden Imperialis on the chest. Instead of wearing a chapter-wide symbol on their left pauldron, the heraldry of that Battle Brothers Great Company is instead displayed, each seen here. Remember, these are the current symbols for the current Wolf Lords. They could change as the lore goes on. The right pauldron is where things get a little more tricky. Here is displayed a Marine's pack marking. Think of this as a squad marking as seen in other chapters. Each pack gets its own pattern, and each unit type has its own color combination. This is also sometimes seen repeated on one of the Marines' knee plates. Battle line units, like Grey Hunters or Intercessors, have markings in red and black. Note that Infiltrators are considered battle line and not a part of the Wolf Scouts. Speaking of, Wolf Scouts have markings in black and blue, the blue being the same hue as their armor. Close support units get markings in yellow and red. This includes unique units like Blood Claws, but also standard units like Inceptors and Assault Intercessors. Fire support units get markings in black and white. Again, this includes both unique units like Longfangs and generic units like Hellblasters or Aggressors. And that takes us to the Wolf Guard. These are veteran units, both unique and Codex generic, and they get their markings in black and yellow. Just a couple more markings of note. Wolfen have markings in red and white. Given the current models, they're placed on the right knee plate. Honor markings are placed over a Marine's pack markings, either on the shoulder or over the knee plate. There are also examples of these being placed on knee plates that don't have any pack markings, but still the placement is the same. As for vehicles, much of the same applies. Same standard gray color, with the Great Company symbol placed somewhere prominent on the whole. Transport vehicles like Impulsors or Stormwolves will also bear the pack marking of the pack embarked within. Now we're on to the transfers, and unfortunately this section is a little bit lackluster. Like I said, I haven't seen the new Space Wolves transfer sheet yet, so I have no idea what's going to be on it, but I still wanted to get this video out for people who are thinking about starting Space Wolves. So I'm going to work with what I have for now using the current Space Wolves transfer sheet, and once the new ones come out, we'll make sure to do a part 2. Here we have the current transfer sheet, and unfortunately only one great company is represented. Ragnar Blackmane's company, the Blackmanes. Wow, very creative. Here we can see the transfer for this great company in a variety of sizes. Small ones for knee pads or other decoration, slightly larger ones for scout-sized pauldrons, standard-sized transfers for regular pauldrons, and finally larger mirrored transfers for Terminator pauldrons. Beneath them we have dreadnought and vehicle markings. The yellow diamond is present to emulate the yellow field on a Marine's pauldron. Below that are honor markings, used on vehicles that have distinguished themselves in battle, and extra large company markings for the big brick-looking gunships. There's also a transfer that's missing the bottom corner of its diamond, specifically for use on the Murderfang Dreadnought. Then finally, in the other corner we have runes, honor markings, and campaign badges. The campaign badges are used to designate units taking part in a particular campaign or theater of war, so should all match in your army. And then there are the honor markings. We've already talked a little bit about these. They're there to give to your outstanding units and models that do cool shit on the tabletop, or in the lore, whichever one. And that leaves the runes. These are very heavily stylized interpretations of Elder Futhark runes. I assume that GW is going for the more pop culture connotation of runes being magic instead of them being the alphabet that they were, so as far as I know, you can use these just as some more Viking-y decoration. But that brings us to the end of this first part of our exploration into the Space Wolves heraldry, organization, and markings. Like I said, I'll be sure to do a part 2 when we get all of the rest of our information. I'm really hoping some more of the great companies will be represented. But until then, if this video helped you with your own Space Wolves army, why not drop a like, or send this to another soon-to-be son of Russ. If you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comment section below. Subscribe not to miss another episode of this series, and until next time friends, be safe, be kind, and don't you dare go hollow.